Live? Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And welcome to another episode of ADRAMADA. Well, my voice sounds really high right now. Hang on. Yeah, another voice. That's no good. Hey, I am Dave Rush, your high-tech from Texas. And this is ADRAMADA, another Dave Rush Ask Me Anything digital alchemy. Come for the shirt. Stay for the news and the project. Oh, let me see. So we get together once a week or so to talk about tech. I love all kinds of tech, and this show is dedicated and devoted to collecting and disseminating information about technology and its uses. And in particular, we're interested in how the advancement of technology impacts our daily and long-term lives. We range over a whole bunch of fun projects and products and techs, and today we're doing a new one. We often spend our time talking about computer and IT, information technology. Not always, but today we won't deviate from that pattern. We are going to do. Busy week. Uh, I did all the research for today's show over the course of the week. I wrote the show today, made slides and all that stuff, and never got around to finding out what was good on this day in history, and I'm not gonna. So nothing good happened on this day in history. Yeah, okay, that was big news today, but I'm not going to dive into that one. Our project today, I don't know how long it's going to take. I haven't rehearsed it. I think it's written long. So I'm either going to skip over some material or push some material back. But it's good stuff. I think you're really going to enjoy it. I certainly enjoyed the research on it. And doing some of these things that we talk about does so much to help understand them, to help ingrain them in our minds. And I hope you will try some of these things that I'm going to show you today and I'm going to talk about today. We have a Discord home for technology. It's relatively new. It's wide open to ideas. So pardon desk. It's okay. It's stable. It's static. I'd rather like it right now in the way that it is. It'll grow. It'll grow in people. It'll grow in content. But I do invite you to come on over if you want to talk tech, if you want to see what we're talking about. By all means, here is an invitation in the chat feed. If you want to get in touch with me, if I'm awake, my computer's on. And if my computer's on, I am logged into my Discord server and a lot of other ones that some of you know. You can contact me there directly or via DM, but if you'd rather send me an email, something more lengthy or whatever, I've just put in a couple of email addresses. Contact me there, and I'm active on some of the popular social medias, Mastodon and X. So there's my links to those. Okay. Well, who's here? A few people. Shia Moonstone gets in 6 hours early. Hi, Shia. Hey, thank you for everything that you've done of late and always, and ever since we've come to know each other. Thank you for what you did today in particular. Likewise, Tullowit, and there's some other people who I don't see their names here that may be listening. If anybody has helped out in any way, or even just thoughts or prayers for my bid to do some moderation on another platform, appreciate it. Thank you so much. And if you haven't, head on over to the Discord server and see what I'm talking about and help me out. Tullowit's here. I'm here. Patricia Grace is here. Oh, already started. You couldn't have missed it by much. 1 minute. You didn't miss anything. Greetings, nerds. Jason Helms, up and Adam. Feeling much better the other day. I'm so pleased for that. Thank you. And not thank you. We thank the good Lord. We all pray for you, and as all prayers are always answered, maybe not the way we want them to be, but they are all answered. I had a tough time with that one. Multiple sermons on that, trying to get the idea that all prayers are answered, even if it's not the answer you want. It's still there's an answer. Okay. But I've come to understand that over the years now. Reading messages, everybody checking in with each other. And Jason's getting there day by day. Day by day. I know. That was a mix of Jerry and the Pacemakers and the cast of Godspell. If you can put those two together, you're going to understand what I just did. You are way too old. Well, let's see what we do have going on today. I got slides, so let us transition that slide, and we'll do a couple just to get things started here. Where are we at and where are we going? Last week, we looked at AVX and AVX2. These are instruction set extensions inside Intel and AMD CPUs that are used to improve the handling of large data sets, such as those found in large language models, LLMs. And so we looked last week at a very quick, easy project using the cat command and the grep command and the lscpu command to find out if you have a CPU that supports AVX extensions. And if you do, great, that will help your LLM handling if you're doing a local LLM. Some LLMs won't work if there isn't AVX extensions in the CPU where they're running. And some of them, they will, but they will be unbearably slow. This week, and I've had a tough time with how I was going to do this. I could do a 5-part series on VLANs, but instead I've chosen to dive into part 3.5 or part 4. And if you're watching this and you watch the project today, we'll start about halfway through the hour, and you say, man, I didn't have enough background for that to make sense, let me know. Kick me off an email, contact me some way, and say, man, I really wish you'd done or would do a primer on VLANs, and we'll start a little further back from the beginning. I had no plans to do part 5, but it would be interesting, and I'll talk about that when we get to the project. So what we're doing today, part 3.5 or maybe even part 4, is tagged VLANs. Tagged VLANs, I have been involved in educational endeavors where the primary author made up their own facts. Things that they said, things that they wrote, just didn't exist. And, you know, sometimes you can raise a hand and say, and they say, oh my gosh, yeah, we should look further into it. And sometimes the feedback is, this is the way it is, you're wrong, shut up and work on something else. Guess what happened in this instance? So I always thought I wanted to clear the record, at least as far as my own past association was concerned. So we're going to talk about tagged VLANs. I will do a little bit of foundational presentation prior to that. At the end of February of this year, we did a show on a product out there called Presearch. Presearch is a distributed search engine that you could participate in. You can be part of the search engine, devote your machine to running in the background, and he does its thing. So I did that with a Raspberry Pi. It's been sitting here running since February with the occasional reboot because of the marvelous power outages that we get here in Houston now and again. Excuse me, hiccups, there they go. And so I've been running that for about 3 months to the day, and it got 1,000 queries as of a couple days ago. I don't know if that's good or if it's bad, if it's a lot, if it's a little. I don't understand what's going on at Presearch. Nobody knows about it. The only way people know about it are if they look for search engine alternatives or if you find cheerleaders Like myself, I love the idea and I wanted to get involved and be part of it, but they just are not getting the word out in the way that if I were more closely associated with them, I would sure be doing it. Man, there are so many venues and so many ways, it's from cheap to free. And so, anyways, I'm running this thing. I got 1,000. I don't know if it's good or bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to track it for the next 3 months and see if that growth is linear. If in 3 more months I get to 2,000 queries, or if it started real slow and then started to ramp up, and then maybe it will continue to ramp up. I don't know. We'll see. What else is going on? A reminder. That's good for slides. Let's go out of those. A reminder, I mentioned this last week, and I try not to mention things more than a week out, but I did because I think this one's especially cool. So on June 3rd and 4th, in the wee hours of the morning, pre-dawn, just pre-dawn, an hour or so in the northern hemisphere here, we have the Parade of Planets, 6 planets in alignment. You won't be able to see them all with the naked eye, but a pair of binoculars will be just fine. And so when you consider Earth, we can see that one, that's 7. If you follow the absolute wrongness of Neil deGrasse Tyson and say Pluto's not a planet, then we could see all 7 of the 8 planets all in alignment. Neil, you're wrong, buddy. I am not the only disagreeer with Neil. I don't go and look for things to denigrate him or anything like that, but I was down some rabbit hole today and I just happened to run into a post that he opined on that had nothing to do with this. It was semi-political, semi-social, whatever. And a gazillion folks leapt all over him. You know, sometimes you write a document and it's got typos in it and you fix them, but before you fix them, you distributed them to a bunch of other places. I copy-pasted this document that I wrote into today's thing, and there's those glaring typos that have been fixed in all the other places. So, okay. Let me see here. I'm not going to do that. I got things to do today, and that was just my own linguistic meanderings. Upcoming shows. Upcoming stuff. Just personal. Man, it's been raining here hard for the last 2 days in spurts, enough to soak the place and get some quick-term flooding. We're going to get that again tomorrow twice. Once about 9 a.m. they're telling me, and then once again in the afternoon. That sucks because I got a gig on Saturday. I got to launch about 6 a.m. on Saturday out of here, and I'm taking the big trailer, the 16-foot trailer. It is loaded to the gills to a place that's a couple hours away. And I keep that trailer in the backyard. I load it up. I move it in case there's going to be heavy moisture. I move it to a place where I don't have to go mudding to get it. I'm going to have to go mudding to pull it out of the backyard first thing in the morning before the first bout of rain comes and get it in the driveway for all of tomorrow. And then I'll de-tarp it on Saturday morning and get launched then. That'll be fun. And then Wednesday, that's a stage gig and with some audio engineering for a 50th anniversary party. Then on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, I've got another gig 2.5 hours away in the opposite direction where I have a basic idea of what I'm doing. I'm just going to bring a whole bunch of stuff to make sure I can do the gig. And I'm waiting on more detail, but if they don't give me more detail, I think I got enough to do it. I know that I have enough stuff to do it, and I'll be able to take the car. I don't have to take the trailer or anything like that. But a lot of traveling this week. So, as those of you who know, when I travel long distance and I'm driving and I get bored, I post mental meanderings on Discord. If you want to see stream of consciousness from Dave, early Saturday morning my time, and it gets done late. It gets done after midnight. It'll take me an hour, hour and a half to pack it out. and then drive for a couple hours home. So if you're up late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, you'll see meanderings. And I don't know what the times are for the Wednesday gig yet. All right, enough of that nonsense. Let's see who all's here. What else are you talking about? Yeah, it's not a DJ. I'm doing the engineering side on this one. I'm just running the mixer board for a man, and I'm bringing stages. Joey Quetzel's here. Hello, my favorite Aztec, not Aztec. Who's there? Who's right next to the Aztecs? The Mayans. My favorite Mayan, my favorite Aztec. You're same neck of the woods. Good to see you, my friend. Hope things are well in, I know what state you're in the state you're in. Dave, did you ever? No, I have not had a chance to watch that Godzilla movie. I have no commitments tonight. I will watch, what's the title? Godzilla #1, Godzilla Beginning, whatever it is. I will watch it tonight. Thank you. And Planet X has been in the news. There's a couple planets in the news. Teasing you and mention your side job. Yeah, I knew you were. I was there. Godzilla -1. I think you're right. I believe that is actually correct. All right, let's see what else is in the notes. Gotta do this. Because I got slides that go with it. And I'm here. What day is this? This is Thursday. I'm either hearing a truck or thunder again. Ugh. Had enough. Okay, 6 news stories this week. ICQ, one of the oldest instant messengers, made an announcement the other day that they will officially and finally shut down on June 26th. It's a Russian-based app company, VK, or that's its parent company. It's been running for 30 years, almost 30 years. And at some point, it was by far and away the most popular instant messaging client. It is done. An unceremonious end for a product that kicked off a niche, a market. And that happens to everybody, right? You want to go back to AOL and Netscape. They kind of launch an industry and then they get bought or fade away or whatever. And this, anything you know of, anything you can think of, is on its way out the door. Possible exception of Ford Motor Company or AT&T. Let's see, what's this? VMware back in the news again. I called this one. Some of you a week or so ago put some posts and messages up on the Discord server and other places that VMware announced. Now, VMware just got bought by Broadcom a few months back, and they stirred the pot. Their first step was to take the top 100 customers from reseller partners and brought them in-house. They just took the customer. Hey, thanks for developing that relationship. I hope you enjoyed the income you made. That customer's ours now. Not surprisingly, this riled a bunch of people. Well, last week, as some of you pointed out, they tried to kiss and make up a little bit with some of the population by taking 2 somewhat popular products and made them free for non-commercial usage. VMware Workstation Pro and Fusion Pro. Okay, I like that idea. I also knew, and I called it at that moment, that this is the harbinger of something big and bad that's going to happen. And sure enough, Broadcom announced to its customers that they were doing a couple of things. One, they were getting rid of a whole bunch of products and only making 2 products available, and they're both bundle products. And second of all, they changed up the licensing And just because it was these two new bundles, it's very, very, very profitable to license them. And so, well, the first news broke of it when the CTO, is he CTO or CIO? CIO from, no, he was CTO, from Computer Share. It's a big company. They run 24,000 VMs under VMware. And when they got a quote under the new licensing agreement for what they were going to owe at the end of the year or at the end of the year's operation, it was X value. Now they got the bill, and the bill was 15 times that quote. It's huge. The numbers are gigantic. They're unfathomable. And so they immediately announced that they are dumping VMware, and they are moving in favor of a hypervisor product that you and I don't tend to know very well at the level most of us are at. We're not working, most of us who are watching this, in big iron enterprise environments. But there's a company out there called Nutanix, and they've got a hypervisor line called AHV. If you purchase and use the Nutanix stack, their hypervisors are free. A lot of people are leaping over there. A lot of people are looking at Proxmox. We've looked at Proxmox here. It's a great, great product. Boyd Gaming, another customer that is bailing out. I'm not going to tell their story, but they did it. So they are they bought VMware for $69 billion. I understand their need to make some of that back, but wow, on the backs of a top 100 customers or so. Woo. This is a nice article. This came out today. I read this on thedebrief.org. Study says AI is quickly becoming a master, or AI, here's the quote headline. Studley says, Studley, thinking about myself there. Study says AI is quickly becoming masters of deception, teaching itself to lie and manipulate human users. So it was a review, an empirical review, that found many AI systems quickly becoming these masters, with many systems already learning to lie and manipulate humans for their own advantage. And we've seen that. We've talked about stories to that effect. So are they all doing that? I don't know. That the research wasn't that complete. But let's call it an alarming trend. This is being developed unfettered. And I am a libertarian when it comes to many, many things. But new things that are dangerous without at least some kind of useful controls. Gene editing, that's another one that kind of freaks me out a little bit. And this unfettered development and growth of AI is terrifying. It's bad when governments get involved and shackle development. Europe, listening to me? Europe, you mandated that all interfaces on phones must be whatever, USB-C or whatever it is. That stifles innovation. That prevents Apple and anybody else from coming up with and using a better interface. That's wrong. But here, I'm a little concerned. I don't know what the best place. Sorry, I've got a bunch of stuff that just slid. There we go. It's going to make a crashing noise. I don't know if this is an Ubuntu story or a Risk story, so we'll combine it. It came out of a news story from Canonical, which is the parent company that owns Ubuntu. And Canonical said Ubuntu 24.4 has been optimized and released for the Milk 5 Mars board. Okay. Let's break that up into two things. There's a version of Ubuntu for a computer that's been optimized for that computer. There's the story. It's the computer that I want to talk about, and that is this Milk 5 Mars computer. Hope I didn't glitch. I closed something, and I don't know what I closed. Well, we'll find out when I need it. Is that happening? That's happening? Yeah, okay. The main stuff is still running. So, Milk-V, Milk 5, is a RISC-V based single board computer. RISC-V, we've mentioned this in the past, but now it's getting more useful. We know about open source software versus proprietary software, right? Open source is available to the public. It may be even developed and changed by the public, by volunteer developers, maybe re-released, as opposed to closed software that says, we are the company that develops this, we're Microsoft, and we're going to create Microsoft Word, and you're going to use it the way we release it, and that's the way it goes, and you can't change it. And our license says if you try to change it or if you don't use it in the way that we want you to, you're not allowed to use it anymore. Well, the same is true for hardware, right? Intel makes closed source CPUs, as does AMD, as does ARM, as does Broadcom. RISC CPUs are open source hardware. They are community developed. If you want to make one, you're going to have to go and hire a fab shop to make one, but you can design it and spec it the way you want. And so there are a number of commercial products that have been built around the RISC-V computer. RISC, by the way, stands for Reduced Instruction Set Computer. And so a lot of this development is about the core code in it, the extensions, the code book, all of that good stuff. So Milk 5 is one of the smallest boards out there. You can see it kind of looks like similar form factor with the usual 40 GPIO pins that the Raspberry Pi has. And I haven't played much with RISC. It's been on my list. So I've decided that the Milk is going to be my first one, Milk 5 Model Mars. One of the really cool things about RISC is the RISC operating system. It's not Linux. It's not Unix. It's the RISC OS, designed to be run on RISC processors. But it has been ported to run on a Raspberry Pi. And I've mentioned this in shows in the past. If you use the Raspberry Pi imager, you can download and install RISC OS for a Raspberry Pi and experiment with it. It's like any other graphical environment. It's click and double click and drag and drop and all that good stuff. But it's notably different than Linux or Windows or things like that. So I encourage you to give that a stab. And it's obviously, it certainly runs on RISC SBCs. So cool, we'll do that. But now Ubuntu is also available and optimized. It works with the proprietary software in there. RISC CPUs are very fast. They're very powerful. They are pound for pound more powerful than the ARM and Cortex processors that we run into on Raspberry Pi and similar generation SBCs. One of the things that it has on the processor is an integrated 3D GPU. Man, you run I'm thinking Ubuntu on there and some games under it. Wow, it'll do 3D games as they are customized to deal with RISC. The particular board that we're looking at, plug and play eMMC eMCC modules up to 8 gigs of LPDDR4 RAM, which the Pi has. M2 E-key slot for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth modules. HDMI 2, 4K, lots of other goodies. I'm not going to read you all those specs. And let us stay in that vein and talk about ARM-based CPUs or ARM-based SBCs. Armbian, which is Debian, that has been modified specifically to work with ARM architecture, ARCH. They just released their latest version 24.5, to support the Orange Pi 5 Pro. A lot of similarities to Raspberry Pi, some notable differences. The RadXA Rock 5. The Rock series of SBCs used to be owned and distributed by Asus, and they sold the line to RadXA. It disappeared before they sold it. Everybody went into hyper panic because it's a cool board. And there's some other models that ARMVN supports. So ARMVN is out specifically, and it runs on Raspberry Pi too. I'm not going to do that. Last news story. And we'll talk about what you got going on, and then we'll dive into project. I don't know if you can see it. I got a spot here. I'm trying to decide if my vanity requires that I do something about that or not. It's the way it's definitely hereditary. My mother's side, all of her brothers, they start with the spot, and my father, he started with the spot, and so I'm headed in that road. I don't know where my vanity will lead me to. But you all know about the product minoxidil, right? It's like 25 years old, 30 years old. It's generic now. It's over the counter. A topical treatment to regrow scalp hair, right? Well, how about a new drug that grows new teeth? From a news site, tech news site called newatlas.com. The world's first human trials of a drug that regenerates teeth. It does. It's not appears to. It does in some animals. So they're going to try human trials starting for 1 month with 30 people, September to August of 25. That's got to mean this September of 24 through August of 25. They're going to and they're going to treat 30 males aged 30 to 64 who are missing at least one molar. It's an intravenous treatment. Be tested for efficacy on human dentition, tooth growth, after it has successfully grown new teeth in ferrets and mice with no significant side effects. I find that fascinating. Is it unfettered growth? I don't know, but it's cool. Okay. All right, let's see what you got going on, and then we'll start into VLANs. That's definitely thunder. If I lose power, I'm not coming back. I'll pick up the show where we left off next week. Yeah, made me think of IRC chats. It was an IRC. It was a precursor IRC. There's a Linux Mint chat that's helpful on my AIM Messenger. The chat that I've been using these days, besides the one that I talk with you guys on back channel and things like that, is Mattermost. I use that over on the Rocky platform. Yeah, ICQ definitely brought back memories for me when I ran across that article. Yes, I am old. And you're blaming Patricia, calling Patricia Grace old. I think you guys, your birthdays can't be more than a couple of hours apart. Can't forget MSN Messenger. When I was in Saudi, I was using MSN to chat with home. I used AOL Messenger too. Somewhere back in my past. Manipulation, bug surprise. Oh, big surprise. Okay. Yes, and buggy. David, did you hear about the ARM laptops some of the big brands are making? Well, Apple has an M2, M3, and M4 laptop. But I get the feeling that's not what you're talking about, and I don't think I know what you're talking about. Spill. What about Copilot AI PCs coming in June? You know my feelings on AI. It is inexorable. What is this? AI PCs are released, not getting the updates. Tops, okay. SolarWick, Qualcomm chip devices. You're right. That's the Snapdragons from Qualcomm. Yeah. Copilot AI PC is supposed to compete with Macs for battery life. Okay. Asus has laptops for these. All right, I'll look into that afterward. There we go, Snapdragon. I'm waiting for the Armada Linux distro. I abandoned the effort to do my own distro, DIY Linux, or Linux DIY, whatever it was called. It was over my head. I need somebody to help me understand some of the steps that I just don't get. This is going to be cool. Reading. Asus is already available. It's not one of the Copilot AIs. Yeah, cool. You guys are a font of info. I appreciate that. Do I need my router for this episode or just popcorn? Just popcorn. But heck yeah, afterward. This is mostly going to be switches. This is going to be a managed switch. And any computer that makes you happy. A Linux distro, a Windows machine, a Mac machine. That's what we're going to do it all on. So, since you mentioned it, let's get this party started. Now I got... At some point I'm going to have to change gears to two different displays other than slides. Okay, we don't need that yet. When we get next, we'll talk about that. All right, so we're talking about today, at the end, the focus, the goal, the premise about tagged VLANs. Again, we can start from the very beginning. We can start with what is a switch? How do switches work? And I kind of did that a couple of times since we've been doing this show. And I don't expect you to remember it all. I can barely remember it all. But then we can move on, and then we can start what's a VLAN, and then what's a tag VLAN, and what's an untagged VLAN, and what's inter-VLAN routing. I'm going to just try and hit the highlights that we need to get us into tagged VLANs. And again, if we have to go back in time and talk about more foundations in depth, we'll do that at another time. So let us begin then with what is a VLAN? A VLAN is a virtual LAN. When you have a LAN, all of the traffic is isolated within that LAN. You got a server in there, you got a client in there, the client can talk to the server. Add some more clients, the more clients can talk to the server. The clients can talk to each other. And that's it. If there's another LAN out there, we need a box to get the two LANs connected. We call that box a router. A router is a layer 3 device. A LAN is a local area network, and it implies an IP-based network, which is a layer 3 protocol. Well, there's an old adage that says the lower in the OSI model you can do things, the faster they can be done. So if we can perform the functions of a router at layer 3 at layer 2, it's better, faster, stronger. So somebody a long time ago came with this brilliant idea. They said, let's use a switch and let's create some of the same functionality that routers do. We will make a virtual LAN. And the cool thing about a virtual LAN is, like any LAN, is it's isolated. If I take 4 ports on a switch and I say, you guys are on virtual LAN 1, and I take another 4 ports on that same switch and say these are virtual LAN 2 ports. Everybody who plugs into the first port can only talk to anybody who's in that first 4 ports. Anybody who plugs into the second 4 ports can only talk to other hosts on those other 4 ports. Those are the 3 ports, I suppose. So port 1 can't talk to anybody on port 5, 6, 7, or 8. Port 2 can't talk to anybody on 5, 6, 7, or 8. Port 8 can't talk to anybody on 1, 2, 3, 4. We have created an isolated, virtualized LAN. And so that's what VLANs are used to do. They isolate chunks of traffic from other portions of the network. Why? Security. Now, somebody originally said this security is because I don't want people in the sales department sending information or getting information from the production machinery department. They shouldn't be looking at the status of how many machines per hour, how many widgets per hour is this machine putting out. If they need it, they can put in a request to somebody who works over there and they'll research that. Okay, that's one way. It's morphed into a security mechanism that's even great for homes now. We are inundated. We are smothered with IoT devices. And they are vulnerable. They go through a lot of rapid development and they don't have a lot of security mechanisms built into them. And so if somebody from the outside world manages to get through my network and into my IoT device, if my IoT device says aren't isolated from the rest of the devices in my home or small business, my servers, my workstations, they could use that IoT device as a platform to launch some kind of access or attack or malice on these other resources. So, hey, I'm going to take all my IoT devices and put them on one VLAN. And I'm going to take all my personal stuff and put it on another VLAN. And maybe we sub-organize even further. We can do the same thing in larger environments. The salespeople, instead of having their own LAN, we'll put them on a VLAN. The production people, instead of having their own LAN, we'll put them on a VLAN. Why? Security isn't as sophisticated. I don't need to put as much sophistication into security. It happens at layer 2, so it's fast, and it's relatively easy to manage when compared to managing LANs and routers. So that's some of the reasons we use VLANs. I have an invitation out to an SME to talk about VLANs in the real world. And I have another one I just thought of would be a really good thing. I just sent that invitation today to join us either next week or the following week. We'll see what happens. Okay, so some things that we need to know about VLANs. Whether you have an 8-port switch or a 48-port switch, there are a theoretical maximum number of 1,024 VLANs on a switched network. And they each get a VLAN ID, which is a 4-digit number that runs between 0001, which we would call VLAN 1, through 4096. So you can make, in theory, up to 1,024 different networks, different VLANs, and you can label them every 4th number. But that's the rules of the game. And we'll get into the reasons why we want to tear apart a frame sometime and look at why that is, but we accept that. Now, that's a theoretical max. The switch that I'm using today to demonstrate has a maximum number of supported VLANs of 8. And that's okay. And I can still number them anything from 1 through 4096. So that's kind of cool. Maybe I just want to make a little VLAN segment out of this 8-port switch, but I want it to be able to participate with VLANs from my bigger switches in my larger enterprise. Cool. As long as it's got the right VLAN ID, he'll be able to participate. He'll be able to connect. All right. Some switches support 255 VLANs. Like I said, mine only supports 8. Don't care about any of that non-stuff. All right, let us dive into I don't want to do that. I want to do this. Brave browser window, which we know always chokes. All right, this is my switch. This is similar to the switch that I used 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when we were talking about port mirroring and port capturing. Password on this one is password SSWRD 1 bang. No, I do not wish to say the password there. So this is a really, really simple switch. Again, similar to the ones that I used last time, but even more simple. This thing doesn't have a lot of capability, but it does support full VLAN functionality, and it does support monitoring and mirroring, so that's kind of cool. So we'll go over here into the VLAN menu. You can see that I've got across the top port-based VLANs, that means untagged VLANs, and 802.1q VLANs, that's tagged VLANs. So I'm going to say here on port-based. It's currently disabled. I would enable that, and then I would go into advanced, enable that, and that would take me into a menu that says, okay, you can have VLAN ID 1 through 8, and there's 8 ports. Which ports do you want on which VLANs? Right now they're all on VLAN 1. Simple enough. It's the 802.1q. That's the standard for tagged VLANs that I care about today. And I got to be really careful about doing this because I could, if I actually say yes to some of these things, lose access to resources that I'm trying to show you today. So it takes 2, arguably 3 steps to get tagged VLANs working. First of all, you have to enable it in your managed switch. Second of all, you have to configure it in your switch, and there are 2 kinds of configurations that have to be done. One, you have to tell the switch valid VLAN IDs that will be allowed to pass through this switch. So maybe I've got in my organization 3 VLANs. VLAN 10, VLAN 20, VLAN 30. All I have to do is go into this switch and say, these are the 3 VLANs that you have to know about, 10, 20, and 30. And he says, cool, I will be able to forward traffic from those things. If somebody sends in a message from VLAN 40, this switch would reject that. He says, no, that's not an authorized or valid VLAN. I can't handle you. Go find your solution someplace else. You can see when I go into advanced, I go into VLAN configuration. I created this VLAN earlier today, 20, to get rid of it. Hey, you sure you're going to do that? Yeah. But I can make VLANs all day long here. You always want to leave one. This is the default VLAN. And by default, every switch, even a non-managed switch, has a default VLAN. And all ports are members of that VLAN. It's usually VLAN 1, sometimes VLAN 0. Here's where we would adjust membership if we set up some more VLANs. Here, let's add 20 and 30 and 40. 20. Add it. 30. Add it. And let's make it 10. Add it. Now we can go into VLAN membership and say in VLAN 10, I want port number 2 to be a member. Or port 3 or port 5 or whatever. So you can assign multiple VLAN IDs to multiple ports. And the reason that you would do that, because this isn't port-based VLANing, is you are creating the 3rd element here, and that is called trunk ports. trunk ports allow outbound and inbound traffic between switches or between a switch and a router. And that's that. And big thunder. We got just storms everywhere. All right, I'm diving out of that. We don't need to see that anymore. It doesn't take much to figure this stuff out. That's not really what I'm about. So I want to do 3 things on my managed switch. I want to enable tagged VLANs, 802.1q. I want to define valid VLAN IDs that are allowed through here, and I want to set up trunk ports. Okay, I'm done with my switch. That's the really cool thing about switch administration when it comes to VLANs, and specifically tagged VLANs. If I want to do untagged VLANs, I have to go in and configure every port. Then I have to say, okay, Sally is supposed to be in VLAN 10 along with her 3 compatriots, Pat, George, and Willow. And I have to connect them through the walls to the patch bay, to the switch, to the right port so that they're all together. Now, what if Sally moves? She gets a promotion. She gets a change of department. She relocates. Her computer plugs into a new wall jack, which I've either got to re-plug in back to her old port in the day. No, I don't want to do that because she's in a new department now. So now I've got to go and reconfigure the port she's in. She's going to be in to be a member of her new group. Okay, all of this takes planning. It takes documentation. It takes prep time. It takes a lot of effort to deal with changes in untagged VLANs, and it takes a fair amount of work in documentation and updating. Untagged VLANs, as far as the switch goes, all I had to do is turn it on, configure it with valid addresses, just so it knows what valid VLAN IDs are, and configure the trunk ports. Still got a plan, still got a document, but it makes everything so much easier because now step 2 is one by one. Here's the hard work. You have to go to each host on your network and configure it with the VLAN ID that it's going to be in. You got to do that to every server in-house. You got to do that to every computer in-house, every printer in-house, every network device has to have a VLAN ID to participate in this whole VLAN structure. All right, I'm going to take a break here and see what you guys are talking about. I see lots of stuff moving by here. MySpace. Does it even exist anymore? I thought it got sucked up by somebody and incorporated into something. Hi, Don. Hey, speaking of Don, a weird thing happened last week. You know the contest we had in February, the first anniversary contest? A lot of people won Raspberry Pis. One of our users named Adon, his came back last week. It's been out in the ether for 2.5 months, and it came back as undeliverable. The address that he gave when it came back from UPS, it said, this doesn't exist. So Adon, if you're watching this and you want it, it's still happy to send it to you. Contact me again and let's figure out what happened. I've still got the tracking number. All right, good to see you, Don. What's the default VLAN 0? It's usually 1 now. Again, there were zeros back in the day, but the 802.1q specs don't allow a VLAN 0. They allow 1 through 4096, not 0 through 4095. VLANs are LANs for introverts. You retracted your message, Don. VLANs are introverts, introvert, you guys. All right, moving on. So we did trunk ports, we did the planning, we did We are at 54. I got 6 minutes. I'm going to show you 2 clients and how to configure VLAN support on them. I'm not going to do the Linux one. That's going to take too long. But let's see, did that, showed you that. So let's start with Mac OS. I don't have a Mac here. I didn't make slides for the Mac. I stole one slide. And I'm going to put a link in the chat feed right now. This is a link to Apple support where they do a 6-step walkthrough how to configure a VLAN on a NIC in a Mac OS based machine, because that's what we mean when we say step number 2. In order for a host to communicate through a switch that supports tagged VLANs, it has to have a tag on all of its Mac frames. That frame goes into the switch checks the VLAN portion of the frame and says, are you or are you not a VLAN ID that I recognize as valid? If not, the frame gets rejected or evaporated. And if it is, it says, okay, I'm going to look for a way to get you forwarded on to the appropriate outbound port. So you have to go to each workstation and say, you workstation, you're on VLAN 10. You server, you're on VLAN 20. You printer, you're on VLAN 30. Now, none of those will be able to talk together, but other people will be on 30 that can use that printer. Other people will be on 20 who are going to use the server and so forth. Okay, you get it? So I'm going to read you ever so quickly the steps to configure a VLAN setting on your Mac OS. And your Mac, you go to the Apple menu, you pick System Settings, you click Network, which is in the sidebar. You might need to scroll down. And then on the right-hand side, scroll to the bottom of the window and click the Action pop-up menu and pick Choose Manage Virtual Interfaces. You click the Add button, you pick a new VLAN, give it a name, give it an ID tag, and OK it. Click the Interface pop-up menu, choose the network interface card that you want to apply that setting to, create, and you're done. It's really, really simple. And yeah, I've given you the site where you can go follow that yourself if you're one of the 11 people using Macs. What I want to do is show you instead how to do it on Windows. And I looked at doing it as a screen share live, and it keeps opening up a new window and you got to do a new share, and I'm not going to do that. So what I'm going to do is show you the steps in a slide-by-slide fashion. When you want to set up a VLAN on your machine, what you do is one or more VLANs per network interface card. Okay, so I want this card to have a VLAN tag that says I'm part of VLAN 10. You can also give them another tag and say I'm also part of VLAN 20 and VLAN 30. But we'll make them VLAN 10. So you start by going to Device Manager. Start Dev, and Device Manager pops up. And then in Device Manager, you're going to go down and open up Network Adapters. And from there, you're going to pick the network adapter that you want to have a VLAN tag, and you're going to right-click Properties, which I was not able to capture well. So, see there, I right-clicked. You can see my mouse is hovering over that PCI gigabit controller, so we'll have to pretend that's the right click. Once you've selected Properties, you'll find yourself in the Properties menu, and we want to go to the Advanced tab. And it's going to be different for each different network interface card. Some actually, let's see, I got to scroll down here, one more slide. Some have an entry for VLAN ID. Some have an entry that might say Flow and VLAN or something like that. So you're going to have to look through all of these to find the VLAN property. And once you do that, see over here on the right side under my head, it says not selected, not present. or the opposite. Above it, there's a radio button that you would click, and that would make VLAN support present, and then you would put the VLAN ID in there. So that's what I've done here. I've clicked the value to make it present. And there's a little arrow, an up-down arrow on there that you'll start with VLAN 1, and you can scroll all the way down to 4096, or you can just type in a value there. Okay, this NIC, whenever he transmits now in his frame, there will be a VLAN tag that says I'm part of VLAN 10. We OK it, and voila, is done. And that, my friends, is the Mac and the Windows thing. We talked for a second about the way to do it in Linux. And that, of course, is the challenge. There are 19 different ways to do it in Linux. Some of them, multiple methods will work on a given machine. Some of them, you have to use this method. And it matters based on what framework of network configuration your distribution of Linux is using. You can frequently do it with the IP command. You can also do it with the NMCLI command, strictly straight command line stuff. If your system is Ubuntu or an Ubuntu derivative or the latest version of Raspberry Pi OS, they use a network framework called NetPlan. And that means you've got to load some stuff and you've got to create some configuration files. You've got to do a little bit of research. It would take me 10 to 15 minutes to go through the process, and I'm going to do that next week. I want you to see it. We're going to do the NetPlan method. Whoops. That transitioned ahead. But what I wanted you to walk away from here is recognizing that if you're going to do untagged VLANs, it's all handled in the switch. You simply say, this port is on VLAN 10. This port is on VLAN 10. This port is on VLAN 20, and whatever. And when you plug people into a VLAN 10 port, they can only communicate with the other VLAN 10 people. Plug somebody into the VLAN 20 port, can only communicate with other hosts that are on a VLAN 20 port. With tagged VLANs, you just tell the switch, you're allowed to work with this VLAN and that VLAN and that VLAN, and then you have to go individually to each computer and say, hey, computer, this NIC of yours is on VLAN 10. Now you're done. It'll work. You can plug it into any port on the switch. So I think over time, we're going to do that. We're going to set up a real, legitimate, sophisticated network that's got a bunch of VLANs on it. Not because I want to demonstrate that, hey, when I plug people into this VLAN, they can't talk to that VLAN. I want to demonstrate how to do inter-VLAN routing, how to allow people on VLAN 10, whether it's tagged or port-based, to be able to communicate with hosts on VLAN 20. For that, we need a layer 3 switch, and I think that's going to be a really fun one. I don't know if we're going to do a multi-session show for that, or if I do a long show. I would much rather do a long show, but I know you don't always have the time to pull that off. All right, that kind of winds up the show. Let's put a nail in this thing. Now I'm going to go down here, pages and pages and pages of that, and edit this, and fix that, and change this, and save this, and run this command, and I did that summary 20 times, so I'm good with that. Last notes for what you guys are thinking and saying. I'll tell my network team that to Documentation, change management, absolutely. And I'm going to go through this process. I'm the only one who breaks the network. Man, you know it, and so does everybody else. The more complicated your network, the more critical the change management procedures are. And that documentation becomes your lifeline. Envision this. Envision you're that person who got really gutsy. I almost got my A+ certification, and I've sent out applications to 800 companies, and I got a yes from one. They know I'm unqualified, but I did say that I understood VLANs in my skills and accomplishments on my CV. And so they're going to hire me because they got a problem. And the problem is Their VLAN system is an insane mess. I'm not an enterprise grade network tech, but I understand them. And if there's a document in there that at least covers most of it, I can figure out and solve the problem. If there's no documentation, I can do that too. But it's going to take me 20 times as long as if I got a document to work with. So that's really super hyper critical. You got time for a long show? Okay, sounds good. So does Patricia. I will plan a long show. This is, next time we get together, it will be June. I'm going to do it in July. It's going to take me some planning and effort. And I got to use one of my big switches. I got a nice 48 port, fully managed switch over there with PoE on every port. And I keep it in another room because it sounds like a jet when we're firing up. All righty. Now let's do some of the shutdown things here, and then we shall call it a night until next week. How do I do this? Okay, we do it like that. Hey, well, everybody, thanks for coming. I just love that you guys do this. I've loved those of you who are watching this on archive. Hey, contact me sometime. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to do. Leave a message in the YouTube message area that's associated with the videos. Let me know what you think or what you'd like to see or whatever. We'll go from there. Until then, for everybody, I wish you a great rest of the week. Take care of each other. Take serious steps to stay healthy. And if at all possible, call or visit your parents. And never forget, technology is great, but the greatest resource we have are you and I. And with that, good night. I'll see you on ADRAMADA next Thursday on the other platforms that I'm on. Until then, remember, how you do anything is how you do everything. Eat, op, ork, ah, ah.